So this isn't really the video I wanted to be doing. What I'm supposed to be working on right now is my 100 video special. But I go to work in like an hour, so I don't have time. I'm also working on a game review, but it seems like I'm like 20 hours into the game and I still am nowhere near the ending, so we'll see what happens with that. But that's okay, because I've been wanting to do this video for a long time now. I was supposed to do it before MLP month, and I didn't get it done. So I know all of my Weiss fans have been very patiently waiting for MLP month to be over. Now that it's the first of a new month, we're going to get something Weiss related out. We're going to start with the Nisekoi trial deck. I've been wanting to hit all of the trial decks for a while now. I don't know how long it's going to take me to do that, especially with all of the other projects I have going, but Nisekoi is one I wanted to talk about before MLP month because it's a deck that really impressed me. Somebody also told me that Nisekoi was getting an English release, but I can't find anything on English cards, so I'm starting to think that maybe they didn't know what they were talking about. Which is fine. God knows I get all kinds of stuff wrong in my videos. I don't actually know what Nisekoi is. It looks kind of like a romance, maybe love triangle-ish kind of story. Typical slice of life stuff. I've never seen it, I don't know anything about it, but I do know that the trial deck's pretty cool. Let's take a quick look at that deck list. As always, if you're just here to net deck the deck list, then here it is. Please enjoy. All I ask is that you leave me a like on your way out. For the rest of us, you'll notice that the numbers are actually very good. It's a very early game base deck, which is a little strange actually, because I feel like the later game cards are way better than the early game cards. Level 0 especially is very weak in this deck, but it does make up for it with some later game stuff, which makes it kind of weird that the later game stuff is kind of light. Regardless, just on the numbers alone, this is one of the decks that you can buy that you can just use one of and have good ratios and have a pretty decent chance of winning. As I stated before, level 0 is a very, very weak level for the Nisekoi trial deck, but we're going to take a look at it anyway, obviously, because that's what we do. Like most trial decks, we're going to be having 6 level 0 vanillas, 4 of one color, 2 of another to fix colors. We have the yellow one at 4 and the blue one at 2. My feelings on these haven't changed at all, and I feel like these should be taken out almost immediately if you can find something better. However, in a slight strange twist, the vanillas are actually kind of necessary in this deck because we don't have very much else going for us at level 0. Still bad, but the lesser of two evils. 4 copies of the level 0 assist, which is good. This assist doesn't have any kind of external effect. I am a little bit disappointed in this, as I am with most trial decks that don't have a 0 assist that has some kind of other effect. Some decks like Sword Art Online and the Hatsune Miku deck have a level 0 assist that actually kind of does something else, and most of the time it's not very useful, but at least it's something. Still though, level 0 assist, the fact that we even have it is good and great, so let's move on. A typical blue 0, we have a plus 1000 during our opponent's turn, Ruri Miyamoto. I actually really kind of like these sometimes. I've grown kind of out of love with them over the time that I've been playing Weiss, because I found that having the plus 1000 on your turn is actually slightly more beneficial because you can cause more character knockdowns. My main problem with the 3500 on your opponent's turn is the fact that your opponent can easily just side attack past it and do the exact same amount of soul damage. The counterbalance to that is if your opponent can't destroy this card and they just have to side attack past it, then this card can also side attack during your opponent's turn and deal just about the same amount of damage. So these are still really good. It's just I found myself to be preferring the 3500 on your turn, the yellows, rather than the blues, but the blue is still fantastic. And finally, we have 2 copies of a Searcher, and that is fantastic. I don't know who this Raku guy is, but I like him. When he comes into play, you can pay 2 stock in the Searcher deck for a key character and put it in your hands. Sometimes they kind of cheap out on the trial deck Searchers and make it so that you also have to discard a card from your hand, but in this case they didn't, and that's fantastic. Your hand just goes up by 1, and you can search for whatever you need. If you happen to not have a beater at a certain level, then you can search for it, or you can start searching for your assist characters. We fare slightly better at level 1 with some actually impressive cards. To make up for the fact that the other Raku is amazing, this one sucks. As to be expected with most trial decks. It's a 5500 vanilla. You know my feelings on 5500 vanillas. I hate them. If you like them, fine, use them, but I'm not going to use them because they're dumb. Chitoge First Date is not very good at all. It's really not a very good card. During your turn, it hits 6000. but during your opponent's turn, it's 5,000, which means it can be taken out even by the 5,500 vanillas. I don't know how you managed to come out with a card that is worse than a 5,500 vanilla, but they did it! They found a way, and we get 4 copies of it. You might be thinking to yourself, oh, what kudo? It's 6,000 during your turn. That's pretty good, right? You can take out something of 5,500 or less power? No. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You do know that you can just pay 1 to have a 7,000, right? 1 stock really isn't that big of a deal to have something that actually survives a few turns. You're going to get 1 attack off. Just 1, and you're probably not even going to reverse a character with this card. And after you get that 1 attack, you're going to be reversed, and you're not going to want to save this card. On the other hand, Kosaki Tilting Head is delicious. So here's my thing. I don't know anything about the anime, but if the love triangle thing is between Kosaki and Chikoge, I am Kosaki all the way, alright? Team Kosaki, because her cards are actually kind of decent. She already comes out with a 6,000 during both turns, imagine that! She only costs 1 stock, and she has Character Discard Encore. Character Discard Encore is fantastic because right now in the metagame there are a lot of level 1 and level 2 based decks that are just way too powerful for you to handle. And it doesn't matter what power they have if they have more than 6,000 power, because you can just discard 1 character card from your hand and all of a sudden you live. On top of all of that, if you just happen to have 4 or more cards in your stock, this card gains plus 1,000 power. So what you're trying to say is this card can potentially be a 7,000 with Super Encore that doesn't cost any more than a regular 7,000 vanilla. Some people have trouble telling what cards are good and what cards aren't. I'm telling you right now, if this card has the power of a vanilla for the same cost as a vanilla, and has one of the most sought after effects in the game, it's a good card. And that is the lesson for the day. The deck also contains a level 1 cost backup. That's a thing. I don't really know how I feel about this. On the one hand, this deck isn't very stock intensive, so having to pay the 1 isn't that big of a deal. You get the 2,000 backup, but at the same time, I don't see how the 1 cost backups are any better than the free backups. If you throw down a 1,500 backup, chances are you're stepping over anything. The only thing that the extra 500 power you get from paying the 1 stock actually gives you is it resolves ties. So if playing the 1,500 would tie you and your opponent, then you can play the 2,000 instead, and now you're not tied anymore and you just straight up win. So yeah, I still prefer the 1,500 backups. I wish 1 had been in this deck, but I can understand that they have the 1 cost 1 in the deck because the deck isn't really using its stock, so you might as well pay the stock and get the extra 500, I guess. Oh, Kosaki baby, coming through for me again. A back row character that gives its power to every one of your key characters, which is just about every card in the deck. And it has an extra effect. You can rest 2 of your characters, and when one of your characters reverses another character, you get to draw a card and then discard a card. Cycling through your deck, getting rid of climaxes. I don't know what you see in that Raku guy, but I'm available. The only thing I don't like about this card is the fact that the deck only comes with 1. My heart, it hurts. Luckily, the deck has enough search that if you happen to not be able to get this card, or if you really need 1 in your hand, there's enough ways in the deck to get it, even though there's only 1 copy. But if this card goes to your clock or your level or something, you're screwed! Alrighty, on to level 2. There's only 1 vanilla at this level, and luckily it's the good one, the 9,000 power level 2. Deals good soul damage, is very affordable, and it has that big ol' 9,000 booty. What could you possibly not like? The deck features a climax combo in the form of Chitoge Lovers. Or should I say, Chitoge Lovers? It's a 2-cost ability, and it's actually pretty good. You can pay 2 when you play Fictitious Love, and you can move 2 of your opponent's characters back to hand. Some people don't really like the idea of moving stuff back to your opponent's hand because they can just play it again next turn, but I really like this because at level 2, if you move stuff that costs 2 back to your opponent's hand, they have to pay for it again, and also you're moving stuff out of the way to deal more soul damage. Moving them up to level 3 before you get to level 3 is actually a huge advantage, especially at this critical part of the game. Level 2 is the most important level of the entire game. If you move them up to level 3 before you, then you have all that extra time to take extra damage before you're even in danger of losing. Kosaki, baby, you're kinda losing me, alright? Chitoge's got some amazing level 2s, and you ain't coming through for me this time. It only costs 1, kind of like the 8500 vanillas, but it comes in with that 9000 booty as well. The big problem is it only swings for 1 soul damage, and that's not really what we want right now. Also, when it comes into play, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a climax, you have to rest this card, so it doesn't even get to attack. I mean, come on, what are the odds of that, but still. The only really redeeming thing about this effect is if you happen to reveal the top card of your deck and it is a climax and you do have to rest this, then you can just immediately end your turn and guarantee that one of your opponent's attacks is going to be prevented. Finally, to wrap up our level 2s, we have Chitoge Love Triangle, and this is actually the best card in the entire deck, because it's a level 2, costs 2, swings for 2 soul, and for each of your other characters with key and or weapon, that gets plus 500 power, which is fantastic. That means that, on average, if you have 2 characters in the back, she's already a 9,000 as soon as she hits that field. And if you happen to be attacking with 2 more characters, she's a 10,000, which makes her better than the Marika. I'm sorry. Everything about this card is great. The only thing that's bad about it is, of course, Bushiroad hates you and you only get 1 copy. Granted, it would be a little broken if one trial deck came with 2 or 3 copies, but come on, man, come on. The best deck you could possibly make would be having 4 of these in your lineup, but chances are a lot of people won't be able to do that because nobody's buying 4 of the Nisekoi trial deck. And to wrap up the characters, let's take a quick look at the level 3. It's pretty okay. When it comes into play, you can draw 2 cards and then discard a card from your hand. Normally, I kinda hate the idea of moving cards from your deck to your hand or your discard pile when you play a level 3, because if either of those is a climax, then you've just rushed yourself closer towards death. In this case, I don't mind it as much, because if it's not a climax, then you actually get 2 more cards that you can character discard encore with. And there's actually a couple of cards in here that have character discard encore, so it has synergy and is awesome. It does have another effect too. When you play a climax, you can get rid of 1 stock and give this card plus 4,500 power. It's really cool that it's any climax and it's not a climax combo. And I don't really think it's that bad of an effect because it lets you step over other people's level 3s and force them out of some resources. But unless the power you get is ridiculous, I think it's a little bit unneeded for a level 3, because at level 3 you're not really trying to get the biggest, most powerful character. Most people are just swinging with level 0s and stuff to deal that last bit of soul damage anyway. But if you're fighting against like a Madoka deck or something, I kind of understand. Really quickly, the deck also comes with 4 copies of an event, Pendant of Promise. It's a searcher that lets you search your deck for a key character, which is pretty much everybody, and put it in your hand and then send this card to memory. This is actually a very, very, very powerful card because it lets you search for any key character, which, like I said before, is just about everybody. And you can put it in your hand. You don't even have to get rid of a card like you do with most searchers in trial decks. This also lets you late game look through and see how many climaxes you have left. And it sends itself to memory, and as we all know, the more cards in the memory, the better, because they're cards that don't get shuffled back into your deck in the late game. Climax lineup is about what you'd expect. The Climax combo card, Fictitious Love, is at 4, and the other ones are at 2. One thing I really like is that Fictitious Love is also a bounce trigger, and I love me some bounce trigger. Gets around Encore, makes your opponent have to pay twice for a character, clears up a space so you can swing for more damage. But the effects of the climaxes are what you'd expect. The one that you get 4 copies of is 1,000 power, 1 soul. You get a plus 2 soul to all characters and a plus 2,000 power, plus 1 soul, plus 1 hand advantage. And it's whatever. And that's it for the deck. I have to say I'm very impressed with the deck. In the Japanese metagame, I'd actually say it's one of the best decks out there if you're just going solely on the trial decks. In fact, I think this trial deck is so good that if it were to ever come over to the English meta, it would probably knock Sword Art Online off as the strongest out-of-the-box trial deck. I haven't quite looked at the Angel Beats deck, so we'll see, but so far this is definitely the strongest trial deck that I've played with personally. Aside from Kontai, but Kontai doesn't count anymore, okay? Kontai is in a league of its own. As always, if you want to play this deck competitively, I recommend getting 2 of the trial deck and then following these simple steps. At level 0, put in 2 more of the Raku Ichijo. The fact that it's a searcher is fantastic, and we don't really have much else we're doing at level 0. We might as well search for some stuff that's better at other levels. Unfortunately, due to how limited our level 0 is, we are going to be running some vanillas. I recommend running 2 of the blue vanilla and 1 of the yellow, although you can switch that up and run 2 of the yellow and 1 of the blue if you really want to. It doesn't make any sense to me, but you can totally do it. Doing this should put your 0 count at 15, which is acceptable. At level 1, take out all 4 of the 5500 vanillas. We don't need them. Take out 2 of the Chitoge first dates because they're awful, but we kinda need something to fill space. Add in 2 more Kosaki tilting head because she will be our main beater at this level. Leave the backup the way it is. I feel like 2 is a very good rounded number for the backups of this deck. That way we're not paying too much, but we still have them there if we need them. And obviously add in 1 more Kosaki love triangle. If you can possibly find a way to get singles, then you want to be running 4 Kosaki love triangle, but with 2 trial decks you only have access to 2. At level 2, put in 2 more Chitoge lovers, because we really like that climax combo and we want to be pulling it off consistently. We can go ahead and take out the 2 Kosaki Onedara because that effect really isn't that helpful. It's 9,000 true, but the fact that it could end up not being able to attack and it doesn't swing for 2 soul damage doesn't make it that valuable. Put in 2 more of the 9,000 beat stick because we like 9,000 beat sticks and it swings for 2 soul damage. And then obviously put in 1 more Chitoge love triangle because it's the best card in the deck and we want as many of them as we can. If you can figure out a way to get your hands on 4 of them, run all 4, but if you only have 2 trial decks to work with, at least run 2. At level 3, we're only going to put in 1 more of the level 3 because it's really not that vital to our strategy. I feel like level 2 can carry this deck just fine, but we want to have enough that we get at least 1 on the field when level 3 comes, so put in 1 more level 3 Chitoge. This should round out your deck perfectly. Don't touch the events because we need to be able to search for Chitoge Love Triangle and Kosaki Love Triangle, considering we only have 2 of each. If you happen to get more than 2 of Kosaki Love Triangle or Chitoge Love Triangle, then feel free to take out some of the Pendant of Promises and put in some of those, although I would first be hitting Chitoge First Date. That card's not very good. As soon as you get more Chitoge Love Triangle or Kosaki Love Triangle, take out Chitoge First Date and then start taking from your Pendant of Promises. Your climaxes are perfect. Do not touch your climaxes at all unless you want one of the blue ones more than the other. I can understand some people wanting the +2 soul to all characters very early in the game and putting in more of those, and I can also understand people wanting the card draw because we are relying a lot on character discard encore. But I think that's about it. Yeah, I covered everything. So if you liked this video, obviously, then please leave it a like. Those things really do help us YouTubers out. If you have any thoughts on the deck or have an idea of what you want me to do next, then why not leave it in the comments section below. And finally, as always, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudo news. Stay tuned, Weiss fans!